Hi guys, as you can see, me and my sister tried to cut my hair, so that's why it's totally different. Last time we did the Q&A, back onto the vocal ranking series now. I've been told that these guys are pronounced idle, I don't say the G, so without further ado, the vocal ranking of I-DLE. Let's go. Alright guys, so as always, just to let you know, I have a Patreon account, if you don't already know. I've started to actually do some reactions and stuff on there, like I'm actually actively doing things on there now. If you want some reactions, or some request some reactions, or some other stuff that I may think of in the future, consider going on my Patreon and all that stuff will be there. As well as that, if you could also maybe follow me on Twitter, I want to get more active on that platform, interact with you guys a little bit more, and obviously with only around 400 followers, that's kind of difficult to do. So if you guys could follow me on there, link will be in the description and my username will be in the description as well. Okay, so I-DLE were really interesting. All of their singers have a very obvious stylistic preference of the way they sing, and their music is written in a really interesting stylistic way. It's not always about these power notes or about all this really technically intricate vocals. They've all got really, really unique tones, so ordering them is kind of difficult on a technical level because they all do such weird things with their voices and such interesting things with their voices. I've seen a lot of rankings kind of from fans in comment sections of things where they put them. I may disagree with some of the general consensus, but we'll kind of see how that goes. Without further ado, let's rank the vocals of I-DLE. Okay, so to me, Xiuhua does have the weakest voice in I-DLE, but I'm saying this right now, we have not seen the best of her. She has many years to come to get a lot better. But let's describe her vocals as they are right now. Okay, so one thing that's abundantly clear is Xiuhua doesn't really trust her voice very much. She doesn't have a lot of confidence. I was kind of researching the things that I kept seeing, whether she asked Suyeon not to give her like really any lines as such because she isn't hugely confident in the Korean language, and that kind of comes out while she's singing. Her vocals are kind of a little bit unstable because she's not really giving it any sort of confidence or oomph. If you don't really have much commitment to the style that you're going for, your voice will not have much of a colour, much of a dynamic, and really anything it can do very comfortably. The main positive of Xiuhua's voice is she clearly has a lot of dynamic range. Her voice is a little bit lower sitting and it sounds like it can go low fairly comfortably. It can get higher fairly comfortably with no obvious huge issues in terms of placement or anything like that. Her voice is capable of working in a lot of different areas, just she doesn't have the conviction in any of them right now to really showcase them mega efficiently. What tends to happen is while she's staying in the low range, she kind of lets a little bit too much air into her sound. Not like enough where it's like just whispery and breathy. It's kind of a full-ish sound with a little bit of air, which makes it sound a little bit unstable. During obviously early live stages, she was mega unconfident and obviously her voice broke apart quite a few times. As she's gone on, she has got a bit better and a bit more stable, but again, this is just because of confidence. In a few years, once she kind of gets that chord closure fully sorted, understands the language perfectly, gets her pronunciation right, she will have a really, really good singing voice. As of right now, the confidence isn't there, the conviction isn't there, so she lets a bit too much air into her sound. Even though it's quite connected, there's good chord closure, there's a fairly full sound, it's a little bit off, and that's basically what it is. It's a little bit too much air and basically being a little bit too timid. I think, as I say, she will be a really good singer at some stage because she has good dynamic control, she has the ability to get into a high register. It's not super mixed yet, it was more in kind of a weak-ish mix, like a kind of mainly in a head voice placement, but not using a lot of chord closure. She went up, but that's again not having much practice with the chords together and then bringing that feeling up and getting to a really robust kind of connected, reliable place. So right now her voice is still, it's underdeveloped. She still needs to practice it a little bit. That's because she's not very confident, but once that confidence comes, we will see a really good singer. Just as of right now, it's kind of letting a little bit too much air into the sound and the pitch is falling away now and again, and she hasn't really got a style that's fully her own yet, and I think that eventually that is going to come. But for now, Xiuhua does have the weakest voice in I-DLE, but in a few years we can have this conversation again and it'll be much different. Okay, so in every single person's list I saw, Soojin and the next person coming up were kind of interchanged between 4th and 5th. To me, Soojin's voice technically has the most it could work on in terms of getting an overall better instrument, but it's still pretty good. Let's watch her sing. Okay, so Soojin is known for her delicate, sweet vocals, and that is absolutely true. Her number one positive is that her voice is delicate, it's sweet, it's got a lovely tone, it's very easy to listen to, and kind of as she brings it up into a higher place, she has a pretty good passage navigation, because when you're singing such a light, gentle coordination, you have a natural affinity with softer, lighter tones. When you get into that kind of falsetto region, her voice sounds really nice and really good. And also in her lower range, she stays light. Again, it's quite like a na kind of sort of sound. It's not hugely grabbed with chord closure, it hasn't got much of a big sound to it, but that means it's gentle, it's easy. In her lower range, she sounds very comfortable. The main issue with her voice is because it is such a quiet, gentle sound and there's not a lot of chord closure, as she kind of brings it up, her stability falls away quite badly. And that's because it's harder to tune to a light sound. If your sound is light all the way through, it's just kind of got that coordination. Without the chord closure, it's hard to really get that tuning perfect. And then as she goes up, it tends to flip against that head voice falsetto sort of place, but when she doesn't do that and she tries to add a bit more beef to the sound and tries to be a little bit more robust, she's pulling for notes. That's kind of obvious when you listen to her. It can sound pretty okay, the mix can be there, but often it's kind of coming from more of a throaty place. It lacks support. I don't really like saying that word, but it's a good example to use here. It hasn't got much in the way of dynamic control, purely because the chords aren't together, and that light sound is quite difficult to bring up into any sort of balanced place. You really need to get that feeling of chord closure and then mix slightly more efficiently. So Soojin's voice, it's got a lot of potential, it's got a really nice, delicate timbre, and as she goes into a higher register, because it's already light, she has a feeling of a light tone. If she can literally get that chords together kind of at the bottom of her range and get that feeling up into an efficient, balanced place, she will have an amazing voice, because she already has the light part of it down. And to mix, you need lightness and you need heaviness. It's kind of a balance, and she has the lightness down perfectly and the heaviness not so much. And then when she tries to bring heaviness in, she gets rid of the lightness completely and then brings up too much of a chest pulled sound slightly. Yet it's still not that big because her voice is kind of small and it's kind of light. So that isn't a huge negative really. I think in years to come, these guys are only 2 years old. I think that will come and it will be great. As of right now, her vocals are delicate, sweet, beautiful, good in the higher register in terms of a head voice ability. Just when she's kind of in the middle of a range, she doesn't mix super efficiently as of right now because she doesn't have the feeling of chord closure and really a heaviness in her sound, which is natural. And then when she brings it up, it's a little bit artificial and sounds a little bit too pulled. That will be alleviated with practice, and right now her voice is more soft and sweet and sounds beautiful in that higher area and has a colour and a tone that is absolutely her own. Just as of right now, she doesn't use it mega efficiently, but that's something you can iron out in a few years, and then again in a few years she will be great. Okay, so just to preface this, I'm not sure if it's Suyeon or Soyeon. I'm going to go with Soyeon, so if that's wrong, please don't hate me. I'm kind of not great with SOs. I don't really know what they are. Anyway, a lot of people put her 5th, and I understand why, and I'll explain it in a minute, but to me, her technique gives her a little bit more to work with than Soojin does. Let's watch her sing. Okay, so Soyeon's voice, the main elephant in the room is it's extremely nasal. She's got a very, very, very prominent nasal placement, and that is a positive and a negative. The main negative of that is the sound becomes a little bit abrasive to the ears now and again. Obviously, nasality isn't kind of a aesthetic preference that a lot of people like to listen to. Phonetically, it's not the best, but that's kind of a tonal issue rather than a technical issue. That's the main negative of her voice. Because it's so nasal and so thinned out, her low range isn't brilliant, and she uses vocal fry a lot more than most idols I've really heard. When she goes down to a low range, kind of goes ah like that. It's kind of a more of a creaky sound because her low range isn't really very connected to the rest of her voice, because with the extreme nasality present, that thins out the vocal tone very much, and it's kind of hard to be nasal and low. But because of that, her nasality, as I said, it thins out her vocal cords very much, so she gets into a higher area really, really easily and really efficiently. And unlike Soojin, who doesn't do this, Soyeon has chord closure, and a lot of it. She hasn't got a power belter voice or anything like that, but all the way through her voice it sounds blended and seamless, and it sounds full, it sounds connected. As she goes up into a higher range, it's not really light or really airy, it's quite full and quite connected. It's almost like a mixed voice. It pretty much is a mixed voice, because she's bringing up a good amount of weight with a heavy nasal placement, which allows for the cords, as I've said, to be thinned out and get into this area. Because of this nasality, she doesn't really have much of a way to go into, because she doesn't let the placement go more into her head and kind of bring up a good amount of weight to balance out into a really great mix. And again, she doesn't have a great low register because her voice is constantly in that sort of area, so it's kind of hard to kind of get that down into more of a chest voice sort of region. So while her nasality does affect her in terms of an upper extension and the lower end of her voice, the middle and the upper parts are really seamless and really sound very comfortable and stable. Even before debut, she was a pretty consistent good live performer because she knew her voice, and with the nasal placement and the chord closure she brings up, the mix in the middle just sounded really balanced, really easy and really consistent. So to me, her voice is more stable, I guess, than Soojin's was, and has slightly more dynamic potential because it's not restricted by a really light kind of coordination and a lot of airflow. So to me, her voice, while not perfect and not really stylistically my sort of thing, because I don't love nasality, her voice, it's seamless and it's blended and it's got a nice light thin tone. So because of the chord closure and the thin tone, because of the nasality, her voice works a lot better in the middle than the guys I mentioned so far, and has a little bit more to it potential wise. Okay, so once again, a bit of a dodgy pronunciation maybe. I was told it's Oogie. If it's Uki or something like that, I apologise, but I was told Oogie, so that's what I'm going to go with. Her voice is very exciting, and it does certain things very well and certain things not so well. So let's watch her sing.
Slamming doors, many flying in all of course, and I wonder why. Days fire starting my heart, reaching the fever pages, the ring out of time, and the whole world is on your case. I could offer you. Do we need somebody just to feel like we're alright? 숨을 더 뱉어봐요. 당신의 안에 남을게.
Okay, so the reason I've put Oogie third is because she is the first person so far that has a place of voice where it's excellent. Everyone so far has been kind of okay to good in certain areas, but Oogie's lower range is brilliant. And the tuning is very good down here. In my opinion, in her lower range, she has some of the best tuning in the group. It's kind of the most stable and sounds the best. So her voice is very well known for being a thick, darker mezzo-soprano tone. She doesn't really excel in the high registers, which is handy because IDLE don't really sing high a lot, so Oogie's voice really suits the style and concept that they go for a lot of the time. So she has a very thick voice, she has a very full connected voice, she uses a lot of chest voice and a lot of chord closure. Now this is a great positive down low because that means her tuning is very easy to do, her voice is very consistent, she has this part of voice down, it's very comfortable, it's full, it's heavy, and it gives her good dynamic potential. If you're default is lightness, it only gives you so much to work with. If your default is heaviness, it gives you more to work with in terms of what it can do, but you need to thin it out in order to get into a higher extension really well. And that's the only real main negative of Oogi's voice. It can go higher in a more belted configuration, but she doesn't really mix super efficiently yet. But that will come. I've heard her do a few different things. Sometimes she kind of maintains the chord closure from down low and just brings it up as far as it'll go. It kind of goes a little bit throaty and a little bit unsupported, and it sounds a little bit shouty, which is kind of indicative of low-voiced people trying to sing high. I do it all the time. If I'm belting, my voice just goes as heavy as it can instead of lightening it. Sometimes she kind of sticks closer to her head voice and she brings that feeling down a little bit into a lighter place. I have heard her do that, and then it sounds balanced, it sounds really nice and sounds really good. She just needs to kind of maintain that feeling more consistently, bringing the weight from down low and kind of the placement of the head voice and bring that into a consistent mix. And then while she doesn't have that part of her voice down yet, her mixed voice isn't quite there. It will get there for sure, because she clearly can use light tones in terms of her head voice and falsetto, and she has a very naturally thick, deep, heavy, fully connected voice down at the bottom end of her voice, which means that once she does work out how to bring those two together in a few years, she will have an amazing voice and probably a very good mix. But as of right now, her voice has the strongest area that I've mentioned so far. Her lower to middle range of her voice, because it's so connected and so full, it's very consistent, very beautiful, and really works in a lot of different styles with good versatility. And it's such a unique tone. Not many women that I've heard in K-pop have a voice this heavy and this smoky. It just kind of lacks the correct feeling into a mixed place in the middle, because she doesn't lighten it super efficiently right now and tends to maintain a kind of really heavy weighted sound as she goes up, which is quite inefficient. But she does have that, so she has more of an avenue than some people have mentioned so far, because she can get a voice into that place, just isn't used super efficiently as of right now because she maintains so much chord closure. But because of the good chord closure down low, that part of voice is excellent, sounds beautiful, and I think it's the strongest part of her voice I've mentioned so far, and her voice is the most developed in that particular area so far. So yeah, Oogi's voice is great. There's an area it can work on, which is exciting, because I think her voice will be amazing in the future. But as of right now, it's not used super efficiently in the higher register, but her lower range is gorgeous. Now, I've seen these two put both ways many times. It's really difficult to choose between the two, but for me, Minnie's voice technically isn't quite as strong as number one, but she's still got a really interesting, unique, captivating voice. Let's look at her then.
That your dreams came true. Guess you gave everything. I bet I remember you say sometimes the last in love. It was great at the very start. Hands on each other. Think of me in the depths of your despair. Make it all. You're gonna see me shake. I know that. 너가 가끔 피곤한 말투로 내가 귀찮은 질하게 오지 마좀 위험하니 누군가 말을 듣고 니네 Running me down, running me down. Set me free, live a big goal. But one thing that I still know is that you're keeping me. 난 두 폰을 놓지 못해. Yeah, 왠지 어린 나의 모습만 날.
Okay, so Minnie's voice is very westernized. She's got an incredibly natural twang to her voice. It's almost Halsey-like. It's kind of like, I like that sort of sound, like the kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of white girl sound. And it's really interesting the way she uses it. I've noticed a lot of Thai idols kind of singing this thinner coordination. And she also sounds like she has the best time in English. When she's singing English songs and Western songs, her voice sounds amazing, because she's the person in the group with the most natural affinity because of her tone and because of her placement. Now, what her natural twang kind of does is it kind of thins out her voice all the way through, which makes most of it kind of blended and seamless. And so far, she has by far the most avenues to her voice in terms of the range it occupies and what it can do the best. So while her low range isn't as good as Oogie's, it's still fairly okay, but because it's kind of more got that natural twang to it, which occasionally goes slightly nasal, her low range isn't exceptional, but it's interesting. It's got a nice timbre, and it's very unique. As she brings it up, it sounds very comfortable. Again, most Western singers sing with this kind of twang, and it kind of goes in like the middle of their voices really easily, really efficiently, and she can clearly do one of a few things with it. I've heard her go more into kind of a head voice passaggio mode, where she flips between kind of her natural chest voice into her head voice, and it sounds pretty good. I've also heard her with like a more natural soft mix, and she's the first person really to utilise this part of her voice. And as well as that, occasionally she can also beef it up, maintain the core closure from down low, place it more in her head, and kind of unleash these bigger belter notes, like the ha kind of more area that her and number one are the only people in the group that can kind of do. The only problem is because she thins out her sound, sometimes the stability in the middle doesn't sound super efficient, and when she does try and beef it up a little bit, again it goes slightly throaty. She's the person with this problem the least so far that I've mentioned, but it is a thing I have noticed sometimes. She tries to mix it because of the natural kind of Valley Girl twang almost. It doesn't really take to it always. Having said that, because it is so light and thin all the way through, Minnie's voice does have the most places it works and takes to occasionally. I've heard really great clips from her and kind of clips where it's not as stable and not as efficient, but that's kind of what happens with a twangy voice. It gives you this light kind of style all the way through and lets you go into a lot of different places, blended in really efficiently, but occasionally if it's not firing, it can sound a little bit unstable, which is what Minnie's does. It's a little bit inconsistent because of this natural twang that she has and how light and thinned out her voice is all the way through. I've also noticed early on she sang quite nasal, but she's alleviated that, so good job, Minnie. I feel as though it's a really good thing that she did, because she used to sound quite hyper nasal in some songs, but then she kind of got rid of that almost, and it sounds a lot more natural and a lot better. When she's singing English songs, she sounds really phenomenal. So yeah, basically Minnie's voice has a lot of range, gets into a decent mixed voice and has a nice belt sometimes, just has a little bit of an inconsistent placement because of this natural twang that she has, and it doesn't always blend super efficiently, and it can occasionally sound a little bit unstable in higher areas. But so far her range is amazing, and she utilises her voice really well the majority of the time, and again in a few years she's going to be amazing. Okay, so to me, Miyeon is number one. What's exciting is she is nowhere near the full article yet, but already her voice is this good, which is very exciting. Let's watch her sing. Okay, so from a technical standpoint and technical efficiency, I think Miyeon has the best placement and the best vocals in this sort of style. Her voice is very interesting. I've noticed her singing two very distinct, very different ways. I'm almost unsure as to which is her natural way and if she's kind of being forced to sing in a certain way with I-DLE. So with I-DLE, most of the time she stays quite thick and quite dark. Again, this suits kind of the concept that I-DLE go for. They kind of sing in more low-tuned songs, but because of that, Miyeon's voice is very full, it's very connected, and it has a very easy time kind of in the lower end of her voice, even though occasionally it sounds a little bit breathy down here due to kind of lack of affinity, I suppose, but it's not too bad. The stability is not amazing down low, but it's not too bad. As she goes into this upper area, she has a very good balanced mixed voice. She is by far the best person at belting, staying connected, and having a really solid, consistent mixed belt. It's not like the greatest mixed belt I've heard in my life yet, but it will get there. Tonally, she's very similar to Girls' Generation's Taeyeon. Not as good yet, obviously. She will possibly get somewhere close in a lot of years, but her tone is very reminiscent of that. It's kind of a bit nasal, quite full, quite thick, but belts really efficiently when they get to this higher area. She sounds by far the most comfortable singing in this heavy, full coordination because she has a good amount of balance to it. She does use her head voice and a little bit of nasality while she brings up this weight and this chord closure in the middle of her voice to unleash these belt notes, and they're really efficient, sound really beautiful and really easy. To me, she's got a more technically consistent mix than Minnie does. Minnie might have a few more facets to her voice, but to me, Miyeon uses her voice more efficiently technically. That's why I've put her number one. Also, sometimes I notice that she sings more soft and more nasal. Often that's when she's doing covers of her own, which is kind of interesting to me because her voice sounds really very comfortable doing this, and when she used the nasality to thin out that voice and that vocal cords and that tone, when she brought it up into a more mixed place, it sounds very similar, slightly less heavy but still comfortable. And then she also had like an upper extension above that a little bit with more of a head voice placement. So yeah, her voice is really interesting. It's got a really good stylistic property. It's very thick and full, mixes extremely well, and has a decent lower range, and uses her voice just slightly more technically efficiently than everybody else does to me, but also has a good amount of potential in terms of how she really wants to utilize her voice, which placement really works well for her, be it a slightly more nasal placement that to me sounds really comfortable, or a slightly fuller, more thick, kind of mature coordination that she does utilize a lot in idol songs. So yeah, to me, Miyeon's got a very efficient voice. It's very good. It's very strong in terms of a mixed potential. It's got good dynamic potential, good dynamic range, and utilizes well with multiple different placements, which to me is why she is number one. But she also has a bit of a way to go to be as good as she will be, but she will be amazing. Again, these guys are only 2 years in, but she's a very good main vocalist, and I feel as though in years to come she'll be a great one because she has a very good power vocal and a very good mixed place in the middle of her voice. Okay guys, thank you so much for requesting I-DLE. They were really interesting, and while I don't think they're the strongest vocal group in the world right now, in a few years this certainly could be because all their vocals have a lot of potential, a lot of interesting characteristics. Okay, so next time we're doing a big four group, and I know a lot of you guys want this, so let's just do it. TXT. TXT are next. Hope you're looking forward to that, and without further ado, goodbye.